They've been there and done that. And now the baddest of the rock gods methodically analyze and dissect musical notes, compositions, and riffs that made them go from the stage to the couch. This is My Favorite Riff. Here's your host, Nikki Sixx.
Hey, it's Nikki Sixx here with Scott Ian. Hey, man. What's happening? This is My Favorite Riff, and we're going to talk about some influences and favorite stuff you just love to play from back in the beginning all the way to now.
Yeah.
Cool. So what are some of the the early influences on you, and when you first picked up a guitar, you're like, I can do this?
I mean, the earliest was going back was like, and I played in like a second or third grade talent show, was that song Wipeout by the Safaris.
Oh yeah, that's the song. I've never learned it, but it looks hard.
Like,
do you remember? Yeah. You know, like riffs are so definitive. Like those notes take you to a time, you know, or
totally
something from the 70s with Kiss or Aerosmith. I'm always time stamped by the riff. It blows my mind.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I started playing guitar, I was 8. So that was around 71, 72. And then, so yeah, everything in the 70s for me was
the best era.
I was just learning. That's, I would sit at home with the records, you know, vinyl, and just learn the chords.
Yeah.
And I think that has a lot to do with why I stuck to rhythm and becoming a rhythm player. Some of it comes from laziness, because I just wanted to learn the songs. So when I would come home with an AC/DC record, I would learn all the chords on all the songs, but I couldn't be bothered to then sit and, like some of my friends, slow the record down and learn Angus's solos.
Yeah.
In the time it would take me to do that, I could learn a whole another album of songs.
Yeah.
So I felt the chords, that's what the song is. It's the chords.
Yeah.
I don't care about all that other noodly
it's the
stuff.
power behind those chords.
Yeah.
I mean, I just love that. I feel that, you know, some people, guitar players, define a band, rhythm guitar players define a band, like Malcolm.
Yeah, like Malcolm.
I know later we're going to talk about some AC/DC stuff.
Sure. You know, Rudy Schenker from the Scorpions was a big influence on me as well. Because, again, a guy who was strictly the rhythm guy.
Yeah.
And he just had such a driving energy.
Yeah.
You know, Scorpions always had this very driving, and his
very German,
the power, and
powerful.
Just the power of his chords, and then of course you see him live, and he's like the lunatic on stage.
Yeah.
And, even a guy in the 70s for me, like Ted Nugent. You know, people think of him as the lead player, but for me it was always about just his groove and his.
Let's turn the volume.
I mean,
up. It wasn't the lead part.
When you're 13 and you hear that riff, that's like ear boners. Oh my God, what is that?
Yeah,
I need more of that.
I mean, I'm in my 50s. I sit home. I have a little amp, and on my kitchen table, I'm drinking coffee, and I'll start playing guitar first thing in the morning, and I'll hit a riff, and I'm I have that same feeling when I first started learning music. It's that's insane. I mean, how many riffs can we write neat? We can keep writing them all day long.
Yeah,
you know, it's amazing. But yeah, I love that. So show me a couple other of your favorite riffs that you love playing.
Well, if it's stuff that I'm actually personally involved in,
give me some of that.
Well, from let's see, the Anthrax catalog. If you go back to the first album, our first song on our first album, a song called Death Rider, and it was actually our bass player, the guy who co-founded the band with me, this kid Danny Lilker. He wrote this riff from the song Death Rider, and for me, still it holds up all the way today. And it's an A riff.
Already starting.
Yeah, and I mean, that was so it was just very much thrash metal in 1982. You know, that was very much.
It doesn't
of
sound like
its time.
thrash now. It sounds pretty defined, even though it was like very raw in the beginning.
Right. Well, when the beat kicks in and the double bass is going, you know, 200 BPMs, and it's. I'm actually playing a little bit slow right there, probably. So that's like way back, but a part that a riff that I wrote, which is the bridge section of our song Indians, it's known as our war dance.
Yeah.
It's become like probably one of the biggest things in our live show. And so that war dance part riff is that's usually when the big circle pit happens, and it's just, you know, it's so just, I like chromatics, and it always just sounds evil to me.
Anytime I can put a half step in there, I do.
Exactly.
It
That's another one. I think the riff, oddly enough, that I'm most proud of that I wrote was a riff off the SOD record, which was a side project I did in '85, and this is before I even knew really about and it's the simplest riff of all time, but for me, I've never topped it as far as writing a heavy riff, and it's just.
On it live.
It's just that I've said that's got to be played at my funeral. That's it. That's if I ever do anything else, I wrote that riff.
What about some other artists that you're growing up, like your favorite bands? You know, obviously you were learning a lot about songwriting and like what you were going to do in the future by learning their skills.
Yeah, I mean, it would, for me, AC/DC was kind of like my guitar lessons. I took guitar lessons when I first started playing guitar for a few months, and then I just didn't want to take lessons, because then it was like the teacher wanted I had to learn theory and all this crap. I'm like, it's starting to turn into homework, and I just was like, just teach me how to, you know, play Zeppelin and play this and play that, and
I remember that I went to take bass lessons. I was like, just show me like same old song and dance off the second Aerosmith album. And I go, well, you know, we don't need to work on your scales.
Right,
first.
I know.
I was like, I don't want to know my scales. No, I mean, I wish I did.
Right, I know. Now I wish I could read the way, like, if I'd been reading for 40 years. But AC/DC for me was like my guitar lessons. Once I got into that band, that was it, because it kind of felt accessible to me. Which, in a weird way, is weird, because now if you ask me, people think AC/DC is simple. I would tell you you're wrong. It's the hardest thing in the world to do. But because if it was easy, there would be 30 AC/DCs. I mean, there's only one.
There's only one. And a lot of us have tried.
Yeah.
There's a song on the first Motley album called "Come On and Dance."
Sure.
And that's like straight me biting AC/DC on the verse parts. Right. Probably is an AC/DC song. But we're all influenced by AC/DC one way or another.
Yeah.
I think that they are more like of an influence. Like some Zeppelin fans are going to freak out right now. But I think they took the blues and made it sound like AC/DC. Zeppelin took the blues, and yes, it sounded like Zeppelin, but you could still hear the blues in it. I feel like AC/DC took it to the next level. Does that make sense?
For me, it does.
It's unique.
It's just... To me, they define rock and roll.
I never heard anybody sound like AC/DC. No. When I put on that first album, I was like, what is this? Yeah. It's not Kiss, it's not Aerosmith, it's not Sabbath, it's its own animal.
Yeah,
and equally,
I mean, there's a reason why I've got these dudes tattooed on me. It's my favorite thing ever.
Did they see him?
I don't know that they've actually ever seen him. When I got these done, it was on Kat Von D's TV show at the time, years ago, and it's their Portraits from the Highway to Hell cover.
Yeah.
And then, like, the night before I was going to get it done and be on the TV show, the producer calls me and says, "Hey, so we have permission from the label from Atlantic Records for you to use the image and show the album cover on the show, but we don't have permission from the band. So, and this, in her exact words, this producer says to me, "So can you call AC/DC?"
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Hi, AC/DC. How are you?
Can you call
It's a
AC/DC and get permission? And I was like, "Excuse me, what did you just say?"
Yeah.
She's like, "Can you get a hold of AC/DC?" I'm like there's some clubhouse we all hang out at after work, like where they'll be,
I feel like AC/DC is like a throne, and it might even be a her.
Yeah.
Like really sexy with a gun and a knife, and she answers the phone like, you know, I'm AC/DC.
So I said to her, "I don't think you understand what you're asking me." And whoever was, I think Bill Clinton, I don't remember who was president at the time, or Bush was president. I said, I could probably get the president on the phone sooner than I could get Angus and Malcolm. Yeah. Like that's the difficulty. Like
I wonder if Angus like tweets and texts and stuff. Those old guys don't do that. They're like, I don't want to know about it. Like Johnny Rotten was in here, and he's like, here's my phone number. And I said, okay, I'll text you. And he goes, I don't have a cell phone. That's my home phone.
Right.
I was like, oh man.
Yeah, I heard we shared management with AC/DC at some point in the '90s, and we would of course grill them constantly, questions about the band, and our manager told us, he said, like, I was like, what does Angus do? You know, and he goes, he doesn't do anything. He like drinks tea, smokes cigarettes, and he listens to old rock and roll records. He doesn't own a record made past 1963. Like that's it.
Right.
Like that's what he does. That's what Angus does.
There's something about those guys that like that's what they do, and they're always going to do it, and like that's how you can have them tattooed on your arms. I go, this is the real deal. Yeah. Like you don't want to have like BS tattooed on you.
Yeah. Let me switch. So since we're talking about them,
yeah, let's switch guitars. So we switched guitars now since we're in AC/DC mode for a second. We'll go back to the Jackson. Tell me about this guy.
This is my Gretsch Salute Jet, which they did. It's basically, you know, an exact replica of Malcolm's #1, which was a '63 Firebird jet. I think a '63 Firebird jet.
And I think that these tops were sanded off. And this is just raw, because I had a bass we recorded the Dr. Feelgood album on, and Mick Mars was telling me about it. He might have referenced Mick Ronson or something, and Malcolm. And so we just took this bass. It had binding on it. Right. Just took the top of it. So it was red with a...
It was originally red.
Yeah, so that's
his guitar was red, and then, he took the red off. He obviously took the pickups out.
Because why do you need those pickups?
Yeah, he totally Frankenstein. I think the only difference right now between... well, obviously, it's not his actual one, but he used to actually stuff a sock in here, apparently, too. He had, like, an old kind of sock.
Maybe mute up
that,
the sound.
Who knows? He put it in there and then decided, well, it's in there. I'm never taking it out.
Because it's those guys. They do something and they stick to it. This works. I'm always going to have that dirty saw in my one guitar that is the sound.
So, yeah, I was lucky enough to get my hands on one of these. They only made 55 of them. And,
badass.
And it's kind of like I have a lot of really cool guitars, and this is instantly became my prized possession because he's my favorite. And Gretsch actually did like a Malcolm Young model a long time ago, but had nothing to do with this. It was a really, they call it the Malcolm Young model, but had nothing to do with like,
this is
his
this
model.
has his DNA all about.
Yeah,
it,
he actually approved it. Like
what size strings do you have on there?
I believe on here is what actually came on here on the
12 to 56.
12 to 56.
Oh, 12.
For a while, for a while on my Jacksons, because I'm such a Malcolm guy, I started playing 12 to 60 on my Jacksons because we would tune down. We would have a drop C sharp sometimes, so that it would help having the bridge cables on there. And but then we started tuning. Then we started because our singer Joey doesn't need anything tuned down if it doesn't, unless it's specifically something in a drop tuning. But he could still sing everything the way it was in the 80s. So
you started going back to
so everything's in 440. So you're playing those strings in 440.
That's
and
hard.
It was tearing my hands apart.
Yeah.
So I went back to normal size strings instead of bridge cables.
I kind of live on 10s. I try. It really sounds badass though.
Yeah. It does. And I mean, and this just acoustically with these heavy strings on here.
Play something AC/DC, you can hear it right there. There's the sound. It's that hollowness right there. You know?
Just being able to dig into those chords. He was such a he had such an intense right hand and super percussive. His right hand as well, and I've always, I mean, that's where I learned it from, because even in my style of playing in the context of Anthrax, which I basically had to learn how to play to be in, we started writing songs that needed a specific way, very, you know, right hand palm muting, you know, alternate picking or the super fast down picking, and I always call it a very fascist way of playing guitar. There's just no room for anything other than that real tight. But I was somehow able to add Malcolm's percussiveness into what I've done, which I think kind of maybe in the early days certainly separated me from the pack with my contemporaries in other bands.
I feel like the guitars on Anthrax albums don't sound like any other bands, which is so hard to do. You know, in a band, and as songwriters and as guitar players, just being in a band, it's like so easy to love these other bands and somehow you go, wow, we're sounding a little bit like that. Sure. Which is okay, you know, like we talked about, you know, there's moments on our records where like that, I ripped that off from so and so. Oh yeah. But, you know, you guys had a really, you know, have a really unique sound.
Thank you. Thank you. I mean, I think that's the best compliment you could pay any band or musician, is that you know who it is, like as soon as you don't even need to hear the
Isn't it amazing? I mean,
you know,
we're talking
that's, you know.
We're talking a scale. Yeah. Right. We're talking only so many notes, and it comes on the radio or streaming, and you're like, that is...
Like, I mean, you know Eddie, as soon as you hear, you know Eddie, it's Eddie when it's Eddie. Like, I know James Hetfield's sound, even though he's had different sounds through the years, I just know what his right hand sounds like. You know what I mean? Like, you could really just break it down to that, like what people's hands sound like on a guitar. But when it comes to AC/DC, they, like I said, they were my guitar teacher, you know, and Malcolm, basically, I just took lessons from him starting around 1977 or something like that, you know, just listening to the albums. And I think my favorite is the song Riff Raff, and the main riff in that song, which, you know, they might not say they got it from rock and roll, from Led Zeppelin, but it is kind of very derivative of
I can see that,
of that song. Although I've read interviews with them, and I think Malcolm talks about going to see Led Zeppelin, and it said something to the effect of he thought the band was pretty good, but the singer was a bit of a ponce or something like that.
Of course they'd say that.
But this one, I think he was first. Yeah. But
Derringer,
I'm not warmed up right now, I feel.
That's all right. Did you ever like Rick Derringer at all?
I did.
Yeah, he had some really cool stuff. He had a couple solo albums. I remember when I was young and going to the Starwood all the time in Hollywood, and he would like play sometimes. It was fucking cool ass shit. Yeah.
And then another song called "Beating Around the Bush," which I think is Malcolm's, like, might be his greatest. And I'm gonna kind of fake my way through it right now because I'm not warmed up to pick it all. But
what do you think it was? Because we're living in the pentatonic world, right there. Right. Right. It's like, it's, you know, formula, and we all know it, and we love it, and we know to go to it. But AC/DC doesn't sound like just that pattern.
Yeah, no.
I don't know what it is. I think it's that damn D.
Probably it's... Love Hungry Man. So great.
So fun.
Because, I mean, so much of that, you've heard it before, but just not with the power that they they infused into it.
Yeah.
It's almost like they just turned everything up or something and gave it a kick in the ass, and then you added Bon on, you know, on top of it, and his way with words, and he literally sounded like a pirate yelling at you. It just,
and it was believable.
yeah,
They've always been a believable band, you know. And seeing what they're doing with Axl, like, you know, they're going to do it. They're going to do it with Axl again. I mean, they're going to be successful with it.
Yes, I hope they make a record. I want to hear it.
I want to hear it because it'll be like, I would think it would be back, you know, Highway to Hell and back.
Right.
In a sense, you know.
Yeah, I mean, I know Axl's a big fan of AC/DC, and even when he was singing with them, from what I was told, is Angus was even letting Axl, like, what do you want to play? And so when we saw him at the Garden, they played so much stuff off the Power Edge album that I had never even heard live before, which is like, oh my god, like Rock and Roll Damnation and Riff Raff and so many cool songs. If they would have done Down Payment Blues, I would have been in. I think I probably could have. I'm done.
Yeah.
I'll never go to another show again. That was the best.
yeah. Let's break out your Jackson. What do you say?
Sure.
All right, we're back with the Jackson. Now what are we gonna riff out on?
Good question.
Did it make you play different? The two guitars?
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I put this on, my hands, they do, because on the Gretsch, it's just that feeling of just laying into it, just smacking the shit out of it, basically. And when I put on the Jackson, I immediately go to that just very tight, closed kind of feeling. They just completely different feel.
Yeah.
I mean, I could beat on this, but that's not. It's
not quite the same.
It's the wrong tool for that job.
Yeah.
I hate when people. You know what I hate is when, like, people will cover or do AC/DC, but they do it with like a really super high gain, crunchy metal tone, and it's like it's all wrong. Like you're not listening. If that's what you think AC/DC is, then you're wrong.
It's true.
Like it's clean.
They're
Malcolm
not
has
metal.
one of the cleanest tones of all time.
Uh-huh.
No, they're not metal. They're a rock and roll band.
Absolutely.
What else? What should I play?
You were like, you loved Kiss growing up, right?
Yes.
It was like, how was that with Ace and those guys influenced you as a guitar player?
Yeah. Well, it's weird because Gene was always my guy.
Yeah.
He was my favorite. But of course, I loved Ace.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally. Just riffs for days, you know. And again, accessible. Like as a kid, they were riffs I could figure out.
Strutter. We
Yeah.
could figure that out.
Yeah. Or like, God, can I remember how to play a Watching You, which is, I know it's a deeper track. I never and then they add in the harmony.
That was great.
Love that.
Parasite, I've always tried to rip that one off.
We covered Parasite ages ago. That's
live. It was Hotter than Hell tour. It was the Seattle Paramount Theater.
wow.
And they were opening for Savoy Brown, and they played that, and I was like, my mind was blown because everything was just so ba-da-da-da-da, ba-da-da-da.
Yeah.
It was just, for my young teenage brain, was like, that's a riff.
Yeah. So great. Ace, that's an Ace. That's so great.
You guys play it live?
It's like we do sometimes. Yeah.
I need to see that.
We played actually last summer. We played at Chicago Open Air, and Kiss was the headliner that day. So we put Parasite because we knew they weren't playing it.
Yeah,
we put
Did you have to
Parasite in our
ask?
set.
Maybe you have to
No, we just did it. They weren't even there yet. We saw them later. Like we did Parasite, and Gene was like, "Really?" Anyway, that's my story.
There you go.
Yeah, I loved Kiss so much.
Tell me about the new book.
The new book, 23 stories from my life that Most of them take place between like mid '80s and the early 2000s. You know, some of it's earlier. There's one or two maybe that, yeah, certainly two. There's actually a story called "Meet Me Under Ace Frehley," which is all about becoming a Kiss fan as a kid. And when I say "Meet Me Under Ace Frehley," it's because when Kiss played Madison Square Garden back then in like '77. I think it was right after that, out in the front of the garden is the entrance to the railroad station underneath, which is Pennsylvania Station. And on the side of that entrance, there was always photos of artists that had played in the garden. And I think at the time, it was like they had a big picture of Billy Joel, Ringling Brothers in Barnum and Bailey Circus, and Ace Frehley. And for a bunch of 13-year-olds, we thought it was the coolest thing in the world. Like, there's this giant photo of Ace Frehley right there on 7th Avenue with the guitar and the smoke and the whole thing. So when we were kids and you'd go to the city and everyone we'd say, oh, meet under Ace Frehley.
And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, exactly.
We'll go out and do our thing.
So if you're from a certain time and place, New York City, then you know what Meet Me Under Ace Frehley means.
That's cool.
That's one of the earlier stories. But most of the book is about just crazy shit in the 90s when I said it earlier, like, who the hell let me in here moments with people. Like, there's a story in the book about Madonna and how I had a night out with Madonna, which that's all the details I'm going to give. Everything else stays in the book.
I need this book right now.
But yeah, it's also one of those things like, how the fuck sometimes I think about it and I'm like, that really, this happened.
You know,
like, it's crazy.
At our core, no matter what we've done in our life and will do, we're still fans.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, I'm still a fan. You know, and I love that. You know, so those kind of stories are cool. Like, I think every rock fan can relate to that.
Yeah, and
they had their band, they had their time. This is like, you know, all the stuff that's like those formative years. You know, some of us start bands and some of us don't. You know, that was a big moment. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. But I think it's a funny book, and certainly if you like the first book, the autobiography, then it's even like, it's stuff that didn't fit into the flow of telling the tale of my autobiography, but some really, really crazy and funny shit. We look forward to it. We're gonna put it up and get all the information for everybody. You want to take us out on something? Something dirty? Yeah, what should I play? I got Anthrax. Thank you. Scotty in.